Where did the conductor of the night bus, Stan Shunpike, come from? What was his Hogwarts house, and what is known about his life? What was his time in Azkaban like? And the main question, was he really a follower of Voldemort? Hey there, wizards. How's it going? Who would have thought that the seemingly innocent conductor of the night bus, Stan Shunpike, would one day be arrested on charges of involvement with Death Eaters? Wow, but when did that happen, Kako? Well, if you've only watched the movies, you don't know this happened because it's only in the book. But don't worry, if you haven't read it, Calderon Ferrado is here to keep you up to date with everything happening in the Harry Potter universe. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into everything that's known about the life of Stanley Shunpike, or, as he's called in the versions here in Brazil, Stanislaw Shunpike, who got the affectionate nickname Lalau.
Man, this translation here, specifically, I think it's weird, calling Stan Lalau. I find it strange, but I get it. I understand the reason for the translation.
Stanley was born between 1974 and 1975. We don't know the exact day and month, but it was in one of those years. He probably came from Cockney, which is in central London, because of his accent. And we also don't know if
Stan did attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. After all, studying at magic schools is not mandatory. Wizard children can be taught at home, or they can also study by correspondence.
If Stan did study at Hogwarts, he would have started his studies there in 1985 or 1986. And he would have finished either in 1992 or 1993, depending on his date of birth. Because you need to be 11 years old by September 1st, which is when the school year starts at Hogwarts, in order to be able to start studying there. But these dates when Stan would have graduated from Hogwarts support the idea that he didn't attend Hogwarts. Or if he did, he dropped out of school earlier, like Fred and George did. That's because Harry started his studies in 1991. If Stan had been at Hogwarts, Harry would have recognized him, and vice versa. Stan would have recognized Harry when Harry took the night bus for the first time. But that's not what happens. Stan doesn't recognize Harry. He obviously knows who Harry Potter is, but he doesn't realize that the person who got on the bus was Harry, and his introduction at that moment was for Harry, as if he had never seen him before, right?
It gives the impression that Harry is seeing that person for the first time, as if he had been at Hogwarts during the school years, where Harry was in 1992.
That's when the Chamber of Secrets takes place, the end of Philosopher's Stone, and half of Chamber of Secrets in 1993, it's the end of Chamber of Secrets, and half of it there. From Prisoner of Azkaban then, Harry would recognize him working on the night bus there in 1993, which is the period of Prisoner of Azkaban. There wouldn't be a problem, because if he had graduated in 1993 there, in June, Harry takes the night bus on Magnolia Crescent on August 6, 1993. So, it's not a problem for him to work on the night bus. Having graduated from Hogwarts in 1993, if he did graduate, but it would be, I wouldn't say exactly a problem, but strange that Harry never saw him at Hogwarts. Harry would recognize him, right? Anyway, so, for me, the idea is that either Stan didn't study at Hogwarts, he didn't want to go to school, or he dropped out of school early.
Maybe he could have been expelled, I don't know. That part of his story is a big blank space.
The fact is, at some point in his life, Stan started working on the night bus as a conductor. Now, I find it strange how they call him a conductor, since he's not the one who conducts, who drives the bus, right? The driver, at least there, one of the drivers is Ernie, but they call Stan the conductor, that he's the conductor of the night bus, and he even introduces himself that way. Even though he's a good employee of the night bus. Stan wasn't a very smart or intelligent person, and he seemed to be pretty absent-minded. When the night bus is called, there, on Magnolia Crescent, on August 6, 1993, Stan introduces himself to Harry. There, without knowing it's Harry, he helps Harry get on the bus, uses a spell to put his suitcase inside, but he doesn't recognize Harry, and Harry introduces himself to him as Neville Longbottom, because Harry didn't want to be recognized. And he buys it. He believes Harry's lie and stays there talking. They exchange a few words. It's Stan who explains to Harry who Sirius Black was, right? That he was a dangerous murderer, had escaped from Azkaban because Harry had seen Sirius Black on the news, but had no idea he was a wizard. And then, you could see that Stan already liked a bit of gossip, having good contacts, being well informed about things. When they arrive at the Leaky Cauldron to drop Harry off, who he thought was Neville, the Minister of Magic meets Harry there, right? Because he was worried about the whole situation. And then, when the minister says that was Harry Potter, Stan is left open-mouthed. He's impressed, but he still jokes around, treats it with irony, calling Harry Neville. Stan keeps working on the night bus every day, and he's seen again, at least mentioned in the story, there in 1994 at the Quidditch World Cup. He's one of the spectators, and he goes crazy. He's enchanted by the power of the Vila, who are the mascots of the Bulgarian Quidditch team. And then, he's so enchanted there, he's so bewitched, that he's shouting, saying he would be Minister of Magic, that he had been chosen to be Minister of Magic just because he wanted to win over a Vila there. Stan was recognized by both Harry and Ron at that moment. In January 1996, Harry, Ron, they return from Christmas break to Hogwarts, and they use the night bus as transportation. And then, once again, we come into contact with Stan, who is there, living his life, living his days as a conductor. And Stan, he's really that type. He was very gossipy, a busybody, you know, and all that. He liked information. And then, when he sees Harry, he shouts out like, "Hey, Ernie, look, Harry's here, look, Harry Potter." And Tonks gets mad about it. Nymphadora Tonks gets really mad because she was in charge of Harry's security. And then, she threatens to curse him if he blabs. If he said Harry's name out loud one more time there, things wouldn't go well for him. Until September 14th, 1996. You know, September 14th of that same year, a piece of news, a headline from the Daily Prophet, catches everyone by surprise. Stan Shunpike, the conductor of the famous wizarding public transport night bus, was arrested on suspicion of involvement with the Death Eaters. He was in Clapham, where his home was, and he was arrested by Ministry of Magic agents, who carried out a raid after Stan was reported for talking in a local pub about having information on the Death Eaters' top-secret operations. So, the Ministry of Magic took him to Azkaban, where he waited to be heard. With the increasing number of attacks on Muggles and Muggleborns, the Ministry of Magic reluctantly had to admit Voldemort's return. Cornelius Fudge was dismissed, and his position was taken over by Rufus Scrimgeour, who, for the Ministry of Magic, was politically the right person for the job, since he was the head of the Auror office. So, we're in times of crisis. With the Dark Wizard, let's put an Auror here as minister. With Rufus Scrimgeour taking over the Ministry of Magic, his priority is to show that the ministry was dealing with this crisis, trying to fix the real mess that Cornelius Fudge had made before, and that they were fighting against the forces of darkness. Even if that wasn't 100% true, and even if this campaign against the dark forces was more of a facade, because they weren't really able to catch the Death Eaters. So, under this completely false facade of progress, Stan remains imprisoned, even after being questioned, and it was found that there was no evidence of his involvement with the Death Eaters.
In fact, Dumbledore himself appealed directly to Rufus Scrimgeour. He spoke directly with him to say that Stan Shunpike was not a Death Eater.
And this raises the possibility that Dumbledore knew Stan. Maybe Stan did study at Hogwarts, but ended up dropping out under Dumbledore. He tries to appeal to Scrimgeour to get Stan released, but everyone who talked to him there disagreed. Everyone who investigated, everyone who simply listened to Stan's statements, said that he wasn't a Death Eater, that he had no involvement. Even so, the minister wanted to keep him in prison because they wanted to keep up this facade of false progress, that they were fighting the dark arts.
It was really hard to believe that Stan was a follower of Voldemort.
Harry even suspected that he might be under the Imperius Curse, but Hermione pointed out that if he was under the Imperius Curse, he wouldn't leave. Talking about the Death Eaters' plans, because that's exactly what the Death Eaters didn't want. Unless, I don't know, right? Now, this is just my own thought. Unless it was a decoy, something fake, to throw people off. But he wasn't under the curse, not the Imperious curse. The problem with Stan Shunpike was his vanity. He liked to lie. He liked to brag about things. So he thought people would be impressed by him, saying that he had information about the Death Eaters. And he ended up getting in trouble for that and ended up being arrested, being taken to Azkaban. And even without any involvement, he remained in prison because Rufus Scrimgeour wanted to show results, wanted to show that they were working and that they were arresting Death Eaters, people involved with Death Eaters. The fact that Stan remained in prison was one of the things that contributed to Harry not wanting any contact with the Ministry of Magic. He didn't want to anyway, right? Because of the Ministry of Magic's methods. The previous year, they had tried to deceive people, tried to make Harry look like a liar. Along with Dumbledore, in fact, Harry was tortured by a Ministry of Magic employee who was Umbridge. She tortured Harry during detention sessions, where he had to write his punishment with his own blood, and it marked his hand, right? It cut into his skin. That's torture. So, when the minister goes to talk to Harry, Rufus Scrimgeour, Harry stands up to him, saying he didn't like the ministry's methods and questions him about Stan's imprisonment. I love this part of the book and will read this excerpt. The minister is talking to Harry there. He goes along with Percy to visit the family, to talk to Harry. Using it as a pretext to talk to Harry. The minister wants Harry to be seen coming in and out of the ministry sometimes. And then Harry says this, "So, basically you would like to give the impression that I am working for the ministry. It would boost everyone's spirits to think that you're more involved, Harry," said Screamer, looking relieved that the boy understood so quickly. The Chosen One, it's about giving people hope, the feeling that exciting things are happening. "But if I keep going in and out of the ministry," asked Harry, still trying to keep a friendly tone, "won't it look like I approve of what the ministry is doing?"
"Well," replied Screamer, frowning slightly. "Well, yes. In part. That's why we'd like it. No, I don't think it's going to work."
"You see, sir, I don't like some of the things the ministry is doing. Arresting Lala Ocean Pike, for example." Screamer fell silent for a moment, but his expression instantly hardened. "I wouldn't expect you to understand," he said, but he wasn't as successful as Harry in hiding his anger. "We live in dangerous times, and certain measures must be taken. You are 16 years old. Dumbledore is much older than 16, and you also think that Lalau shouldn't be in Azkaban. Are you turning Lalau into a scapegoat, just like you want to turn me into a mascot? I really like it." Harry, at 16 years old, is standing up to the Minister of Magic. He doesn't care, because the ministry is messing things up, and he's confronting them. So, he's just being kept locked up as a scapegoat. Now, if he wasn't a Death Eater, if he had no involvement with the Death Eaters, like in 1997 when the Battle of the Seven Potters happens, Stan Shunpike is there. The fact is that there was a mass breakout from Azkaban, which was planned by Voldemort and other Death Eaters who were outside the prison. And Stan Shunpike left his cell, just like the other prisoners. But he just left one cell to enter another, because he was placed under the Imperious Curse and started following orders from the Death Eaters. That's why in the Battle of the Seven Potters, when the Order of the Phoenix is going to transport Harry, and they're going to take him, get him out of Privet Drive to take him to a safe, protected house, since his protection would end there, at Privet Drive. Stenchen Pike is one of those among the Death Eaters. In fact, he's the one fighting with Harry, personally chasing after him. Harry hits Sten with a spell. His Death Eater mask falls off, and Harry realizes it's him. But since they were 30 meters high, Harry doesn't try to stun him. He doesn't cast a spell that would knock him off his broom, because he knew that would be the same as killing him. After all, at 30 meters high, he cast a spell. There, if he faints, he'll fall to the ground, he'll crash, he'll die. So Harry uses Expelliarmus, and that identifies him as the real Harry, because that was his signature spell, right? Expelliarmus. In fact, he had escaped from Voldemort with Expelliarmus in the cemetery, and the Death Eaters already knew that this was the spell he might use. So, when Harry uses Expelliarmus on Stan and just knocks the wand out of his hand, Stan stops chasing Harry, and then Voldemort himself comes to try to catch him. This is the last time we have any contact with Stan in the books. We don't know what happened to him. He isn't mentioned in the Battle of Hogwarts, but it's likely that after Voldemort's defeat, he, like many others who were under the Imperius Curse, ended up being freed. What we know, after the books, is from the game Harry Potter Magical Weekend, which is a card game. The cell phone one was removed from Brazil. I don't know why, but the server's no longer here. There's an episode with Shunpike, with Ernest actually, right Ernesto? From Night Bus, where they stop on the road, find a pumpkin, and then they get out to see what it is. And when they get back on the bus, there are several pumpkins in the places where the wizard passengers were inside the night bus, and also a giant pumpkin. It gets stuck on Sten's head. And this happens around 2010, that is, more than 10 years after the end of the Second Wizarding War and the Battle of Hogwarts. So, according to this game, he survived the battle and lived his life there, normal, and kept working on the night bus. But that's not canonical official information, right? Of course, everything that goes into these games needs to be approved. But it didn't come from the author. It wasn't J.K. Rowling who wrote this. The people put it in the game and she approved it. So, does that mean he's alive? It's a shame that in the movie, Shunpike only appears in Prisoner of Azkaban and then never again, right? And he has these other appearances in the books. I hope that in the series he appears more often, that it shows him being arrested, that it shows him going to Azkaban, because that adds a bit of mystery to the story, right? Cool, it shows the injustices of the Ministry of Magic, even with the change of government, right? With Fudge's government leaving, who denied Voldemort's return. And then, with a new government wanting to do things just for show, it's really cool. If they explore that, you know, it's going to be really awesome, so I really want to see it too. I really want to see that. And did you remember that Stan, the conductor of the night bus, had been imprisoned in Azkaban, that he had gone to the Quidditch World Cup, that he had taken part in the Battle of the Seven Potters, that he was under the effect of the Imperius Curse?
Yeah, the books have a lot of details that the movies left out, so a lot of people don't know about this. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
If you liked it, leave your like, subscribe, do all that, leave a comment, share it. If you want to become a member, there are badges that go next to your name and emojis to use in the comments. You can also contribute with the thanks button so your comment stands out from the others. Alright, help out however you want, however you can. Thanks. I'll see you in the next episode, and until then, mischief managed.